Those of y'all who do not know, and I was born and raised Wilmington, Delaware. Background is in social work. I have my bachelor's in social work, my master's in administration and human services, and I'm really just somebody that's really passionate about like seeing people design and live their best life and being the best version of themselves. I am an entrepreneur. I've been an entrepreneur for 8 years now. I'm going on my 8th year. And I've been a full-time entrepreneur for almost 6 years. So I've been in this space for a while. My first business is a mobile food business, a mobile food and catering company. And this is my second business, which is Success Strategies by Antoinette. And in this business, I support individuals and organizations through leadership development, strategic facilitation, and program design and management. My work empowers adult firstborn daughters and also mission-driven teams to move from survival mode to intentional growth, purpose, and impact in life, business, and beyond. A little bit about my why behind facilitating this workshop today. First and foremost, my why is because of about 6 or 7 years ago, I was at a Goodwill. I was thrifting and I came across this book on birth orders. And after reading that book, it helped me to look at myself and helped me to just see who I am based off of the position that I was born in. You know, I had nothing to do with me being born or the order that I was born, but because I was the firstborn and the only child, I have realized that, you know, there's certain characteristics that I have, there's certain challenges that I face, certain things that I deal with within that are some are healthy, but some things aren't healthy. And when I began to read about myself based on my birth order, I said, oh no, I got to do something about this. Or I also embraced like who it said that I was as well, because there was some stress associated and also, like I said, some challenges associated with the birth role as well. So me reading that book definitely is encouraging me or has encouraged me to facilitate this type of workshop, but also my experience, because I am a firstborn daughter, and as a firstborn daughter, I am someone who really enjoyed my role as being the firstborn. But as I grown and got older and going through my own therapy and working on my own healing journey, I have realized that although I embraced my role, there was some residue left behind. There was still some things that I had to heal from and deal with just because of, you know, the position that I was born into. And then talking to other people, they also said that, you know, some people, elder sisters or firstborn daughters, I've talked to a lot of them and they said some of them enjoyed, you know, the role, but then a lot of them said how much they resented the role. And as I began to talk to other daughters, I was kind of surprised to hear how, although we all, you know, were big sisters, we all didn't have the same story. And that's why I wanted to facilitate this workshop today, because whether you were someone who took pride in the role or whether you are somebody who, you know, resented the role, I want you to know that there is power within your story. And I also want you to just take control of just this role, because when you're in this role as the big sister, as the firstborn, you know, you are automatically like responsible for other people. And then in life, you learn that this is how life is supposed to be, where you're always supposed to put other people first. And that's just not the case. No, it's time for us to put ourselves first. So me facilitating this workshop is my way of saying, I want you to like put yourself first. You know, that's what this is. This is supporting you and putting yourself first, especially as we're about to head into the new year that I'm really excited about. So this space is for you. If you are a firstborn daughter, if you're an adult firstborn daughter, so that means that if your mom's first child was a girl and that was you, then space is for you. But also this space is also for traditional and untraditional firstborns as well. And when I'm talking about untraditional firstborns, I'm talking about those daughters who, you know, entered the family. And when I went live the other day, somebody said, well, I was the youngest in the family, but I always felt like I was the firstborn. I always felt like I was in charge. Always felt like everything fell on me, you know. So that's an untraditional way. Or maybe like in my family, where I was born and then 13 years later, my mom started having more kids. And when you talking about birth order, they say that every 7 years it kind of like restarts. So if you had an 8-year-old child and then you decided to have another baby 8 years later, then that's like another story being born, and that child will probably have a different type of upbringing than the first child that you gave birth to. So that's also considered like an untraditional firstborn. But if you're the woman that's always been the strong one, the responsible one, the fixer, or being even considered being the second mom in your family, then this space is for you. Right? So let's get into the vibes and understanding the vibes of this workshop, of this space, of this community that is being built of firstborn daughters. So this hour is for you. And not for nobody else. You're really taking this time to invest in yourself. I always say your biggest currency is your time. And the fact that you're spending this time with me today, I truly, truly appreciate it. And I don't want you to, take it lightly. So yes, this hour is for you. While we are in this space as firstborn daughters, sometimes we have been taught, some of us, not all of us, but some of us has been taught to perform and to show up perfect, but not here. There's no performing here. There's no perfection here. It's just honesty, right? It's just honesty. And this is a safe space. So share what feels safe to you. You don't got to overshare, but just know that this is a safe space, and share what feels safe. As I said in the email, y'all, cameras do not have to go on, right? But I would like for you to engage with me through the chat or through talk. Because I'm on this sharing my screen with this PowerPoint, I don't believe I'm going to be able to see the chats like that. So that's something for me to think about in the future. But definitely engage with me. If I'm asking you questions, please just answer me so I can know what's going on. And in this space, y'all, we honor pride, because some of us, like I said, the firstborn story is different for all of us. So some of us took pride in the role, but also some of us resented the role, right? And both stories we honor here, right? Being a firstborn daughter, some of us had to show up and be really, really strong, and we honor that too. But this is also a place where I would love for us firstborn daughters to head into this next season of our life, and I would love for us to be like into our soft girl era, because for so long we have had to be strong for everybody else, but I would love to welcome you to be soft, right? So both, but if you like your strength, and that's who you are, like I do value my strengths and being strong and all of that, that's welcome here too. All right, so what you're going to walk away with by the end of today's session, you are going to walk away with, you're going to be able to name your superpowers. You're going to be able to name your superpowers. You're also going to be able to see how you being born as the firstborn daughter, how it shaped your identity and how it shaped your strengths as well. You're also going to acknowledge the residue, because whether you are a firstborn daughter and you resented the role or you took pride in the role, there is still some residue there, and we're going to talk about that as well. And then last but not least, we're going to close it out by choosing one strength-led action that you're going to honor yourself for this week, okay? Because we always do so much for everybody else, and now it's time for us, right? So let's get into the complexities of being a firstborn. Let me try to do something real quick. The complexities of being a firstborn. So as I said, some of us, when it comes to being the firstborn, it is a real complex role, right? Some of us really took pride in the role, saying like, I love being the firstborn. I love being a dependable one. I love being the one that my family could rely on. And I kind of relate to that a lot. Like, I really did take pride in my role of being that firstborn daughter, the one that my mom could depend on, the one that my siblings could depend on. Like, I really took pride in that. But like I said earlier, some people really resented the role. Like, you might have the concept like, I have never asked for this. I'm tired of being the one that everybody depends on. I didn't sign up for this. And yes, there's some resentment there. And at the end of the day, no matter what side you are on, there has been some residue left behind in that role. And we're going to talk a little bit about the residue today, not get too deep, but we're going to talk a little bit about that residue as well. Next. Okay. Sorry, y'all. Oh, so this is an opportunity to engage right now. It's coming up. So if y'all could tell me, not in the chat, or maybe in the chat. Let me see if I can access the chat. No, I cannot access the chat. So if y'all could, if you could, anybody would like to share with me one word that describes how being the firstborn has felt for them, or how it has felt for you. How was being the firstborn for you? Just one word. Would anybody like to share? I'm really about to turn off this. Or anybody want to put it in the chat? How being the firstborn has, how they felt about being the firstborn in their family. If not, it's okay. And we can move forward. Your sound keeps going in. I don't know if the only one that's hearing it or... My sound? Okay, hold on. All right, I'm just going to log in from another source.
Recording in progress.
All right, can you hear me better now? Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. So y'all won't have access to the PowerPoint, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep moving forward. So no one placed in the chat like how it felt for them to be the firstborn, but it can vary and it can range. Like some people it felt heavy for them to be the firstborn, right? Some people it was overlooked. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Overlooked. It's definitely easy for you to feel overlooked as someone being the firstborn, right? Especially when you're there and doing it for everybody else, and then when it's time for you, you can sometimes feel overlooked. So thank you for sharing that. It can also feel exhausting, right? Some people can feel proud. It can feel confusing. It can feel honorable. But there's a lot of emotions. There are a lot of feelings attached with being that firstborn daughter, right? But when I was doing my research, and there's this term that came out for me as I was doing my research, and it was called the benefactor of greatness, right? And as it pertains to this definition right here, and within this conversation, should I say, the benefactor of greatness means, as a firstborn daughter, it means someone who intentionally uses her gifts, experiences, and influence to invest in greatness, right? Not only the greatness within herself, but also the greatness in others without abandoning her own needs, her dreams, and well-being. And when we talk about being that benefactor, a benefactor simply means that you've always given your time, your energy, your money, your support, your love to everybody else. But it's time for you to be a benefit of that as well. You know what I mean? Like, this is not about you giving more. It's not about you giving differently, but it's really about you just giving more of yourself, because you are worthy of the same things that you had to give other people, the same traits that you had to give other people. And I wish y'all could see the PowerPoint, because you could really see about what I'm talking about. But when you will have the PowerPoint on the replay, right? So now we're going to get into those firstborn superpowers, because today, as I said in the live that I did last week, we're using a SWOT framework to help us to look at us holistically as this firstborn daughters, and how we can show up holistically in this role, right? So when it comes to the SWOT analysis, the S stands for the S stands for strengths, the W stands for weaknesses, the O stands for opportunities, and the T stands for threats. And today we are focusing on our strengths, the S, in the SWOT analysis, and helping us to really redefine, helping us to understand what our strengths are, and helping us to claim those strengths within us as adults, right? So when it comes to the firstborn superpowers, right, it's not just about you being a strong one. It's deeper than that. It's about, as the firstborn daughter, your birth order, just by you being born in the position that you were born in, you now carry real transferable strengths that support you in every area of your life, in your business, in your leadership, in your parenting, in your relationships. Like, this being just the firstborn daughter really supports you in showing up in all of those areas. And I really want you to understand how, and that's what we're going to get into today. Even if you resented the role or took pride in the role, your story holds a lot of power, even in those messy parts. And today we're going to name those strengths out loud, right? So when we talk about the superpower, I want you to know that it's a superpower now, but when we were younger, as that firstborn daughter, taking care of everybody else, it wasn't a superpower. It was what we used to survive in the environments that we were born into, right? So as a firstborn daughter, maybe one of your survival methods, right? Because our superpower used to be our survival method, but now we are reframing it and we're turning it into a strength, right? So maybe your superpower or your survival method back then was maybe like reading a room, right? You had to learn how to read the room so you could kind of tell what mood everybody was in, so you can maybe so that maybe you can keep things from happening within the family, keep things from blowing up. And when I think about this, I always think about especially those people who were born in those traumatic families, seeing trauma growing up. So you really had to learn how to read the room, right? You really had to learn how to check for what was going on, right? So that survival method turned into emotional intelligence as an adult. So as a child, you used to read the room to survive, but now you read the room because you are an emotionally intelligent person, and you can understand like how someone is feeling, and now you can say, oh, you look sad today. Are you okay? Like, you can definitely tune in. But as a child, you was just reading the room to protect yourself. But now as an adult, this is your superpower, because now you are reading the room to control the room, right? To help the room in a sense, right? So that's one of those survival methods that turned into a superpower. And then maybe when you were younger, you said no, like you rejected it. You wasn't feeling it, right? So you said no when you pulled back, and you probably told yourself, no, I'm not raising these kids. These are not my kids. I'm not doing all of this, right? And even if it came out as rebellion or as an attitude, guess what you was doing as a child? You were just setting early boundaries. That was your spirit saying, this is too much for me. And that was your spirit trying to, protect you. But because you were a child, you couldn't really do it in a way that was, maybe that was respected, or do it in a way that was protected, or do it in a way that was understood. But you were literally learning how to set boundaries at that time. And now that you are adult, Whether you might be an adult where now you might feel as though you struggle with setting boundaries. But if you go back into your childhood, you will see, especially if you were someone who rejected the role or resented the role, you will see that, no, I can set boundaries. I've been setting boundaries all my life. You know what I mean? So you can do that. Another superpower that was once a survival method is self-soothing. And I think about that a lot because I not only grew up as the only child, but I didn't only grow up as the firstborn daughter, but I grew up as the only child. And being the only child, especially in an environment where I seen a lot of domestic violence, I seen a lot of abuse going on in the household, and I had to do a lot of not only soothing of my parent, but also soothing of myself, because sometimes I had to deal with the residue of when she would go to work and I'm back at home by myself. I have to deal with my own self. I have to deal with my own thoughts. I have to deal with me. I have to learn how to cope on my own. I didn't have a big sister that I could just run to, or a big brother that I could run to share all the challenges that I was going through. I didn't have that. So I had to learn how to cope on my own, right? And as an adult and as a child, you know, it's a struggle and you don't understand. You might ask yourself, like, why do I got to go through all this? But as a child, as an adult, you can turn that into a superpower, because now you know what? I didn't like feeling like that as a child, but I have resourcefulness. Like I can take care of myself. And sometimes we forget how, you know, we are able to take care of ourselves. Sometimes we put a lot on other people, but as that firstborn daughter, you literally been taking care of yourself and others for a long time. So whenever you start to think that you can't do it or you're not capable, then, you know, that's not true, because you are capable, because you've been doing it. And then another superpower that has been turned into like or a survival method that's turned into a superpower is discernment. Like when you were younger, you could have seen that because you were younger and you were the firstborn, especially depending on the age difference within the family. My mom, she had me when she was 19. So because she had me when she was 19, sometimes I feel like not only is that my mom, but that can also be my sister. And sometimes I feel like I had to parent her too sometimes, right? So because we were so close in age, I used to see how when adults show up, or even in my family, I feel like I came from a family where they used to always say, do as I say, not as I do. Do as I say, not as I do. And when I was younger, I just knew that was some bull crap. That was BS, right? And when you're younger, you get to see that, you know, adults don't really, their words don't match their actions. You are learning discernment early. And you might not even know that, but that's what you were doing. You were learning discernment early. So some superpowers that might show up for you. If you took pride in a role, one of your superpowers might be leadership, right? Because you naturally take charge. So that might be a superpower for you. One of your superpowers might be problem solving, because you always had to figure it out. So that's a superpower for you. Maybe protection and being a protector. That might be a superpower that you hold dearly and truly, because I know it's one for me, because you had to watch out for everybody. So it just comes naturally for you to be the protector, right? Maybe your superpower is being reliable. Maybe you're really, really good at being reliable, because if you said yes, people know that if they ask you for something, they could rely on you to do it. And last but not least, another superpower that might show up for you if you were a firstborn daughter that took pride in your role is resilience, right? Because you survived more than what people know about. You survived it all. You survived, you just survived it all, right? So resilience is a superpower that might show up for you. That might be one of your superpowers that you claim and that you wear proudly. But if you're someone who resented the role, then you might be saying, hold on, I don't identify with none of these superpowers at all. And I want to help you to let you know that, yes, you have your own set of superpowers. Even though it doesn't look like, or it's not the same as the daughter who took pride in her role, but you still have your own set of superpowers as well. So let's go through those really, really, really quickly. So let me see. So one of your superpowers as a firstborn daughter, one of your superpowers might be survival, right? You may have escaped. You escaped the role. So you probably went to your friend's house, or you probably was in the room, you shut your door, you was on your phone, you just didn't even relate to what was going on. That was your body saying, if I'm in this 24/7, I will break. I need a way to keep going, right? So that was how you survived. That's a strength. You supported yourself in surviving. That's a big deal. What about another superpower that you might relate to as a firstborn daughter who could have resented the role or avoided the role altogether is discernment and seeing the truth, right? Because you noticed at a young age that this was not fair, right? You also saw the gap between what adults said and what they did. And that ability to see clearly is a superpower, right? For you to understand as a child that this isn't fair and for you to do something about it, that's a big deal, right? Even if it wasn't respected, even if it wasn't protected, but it still matters. It still matters. You refusing a role, you could have, pushed back, you could have rebelled, you could have shut down, all of that. And people called you difficult for doing that. People made you feel guilty for, protecting yourself, for you pushing back. But at the end of the day, that was you creating a boundary, right? So even if you resented the role or avoided it, there is still a strong, intelligent part of you that tried to protect you, right? And that part of you is not broken. That part of you is wise. And now, as a grown woman, we get to honor how we tried to keep us safe, when we were children. And then now we can retrain those strengths so it doesn't always have to show up in survival mode, right? So if you had to choose one from how you responded as a firstborn role growing up, would it be more that you stepped up, or would you say that you pulled back? And you can put that in the chat. Did you step up in the role, or did you pull back in the role? What was your relationship with being that firstborn, if you would like to share in the chat? For me, like I said, I know I stepped up. That was my relationship with being a firstborn. I definitely stepped up. All right. So now I'm going to go into the next activity, right? Or into this little activity. I would like for you to name your superpower. You can say it out loud. Also, if you've seen, if you looked at your workbook, you can see that you can complete it in your workbook as well, because this activity is in your workbook. But this is all about naming your firstborn superpower, right? So I want you to complete the sentence. One of my firstborn superpowers is, and it helped me by what? So if you stepped up and you took pride in your role, then your word might be leadership, right? Your word might be nurturing. Your superpower might be organizing or protecting or just showing up. That might be what your superpower is. And if that is your superpower, how did it help you, right? And if you resented or avoided the role, your word might be survival or discernment or refusal, truth telling, right? Protecting your peace. What is your superpower and how did it help you? And I'll start. So for me, one of my firstborn superpowers that I carry very strongly on my back is protecting my peace. I do not play about my peace, right? Because I know what it's like to have your peace disturbed from a childhood. So one thing I don't do is I don't play about my peace. So one of my firstborn superpower is peace. And it helped me by creating boundaries, right? And learning early what disturbs my peace. So that's my sentence. Would anybody like to share their sentence on what your firstborn superpower is? What is your firstborn superpower? If you want to leave it in the chat. All right. All right, y'all. So I think my firstborn superpower is that I'm a fixer and I can fix anything. And I love that. I love that that's your firstborn superpower. And it definitely just shows not in just fixing stuff, but just in your crafty ways about how you just take, no, it's all good. It's all good. And I still love it because at the end of the day, that is a superpower, being able to fix things. Being able to, you know, if anything, that having that mentality, having that mindset, that is a superpower, because some firstborn sisters, they grow up opposite and feeling like they can't fix anything, feeling like, you know, especially if you are somebody who like resented that role. So thank you for sharing that. And y'all, if anybody else wants to share, you can do that in the chat. But what is your firstborn superpower? Being a fixer. Mine is protecting my peace. That's what I'm really good at. So now we're going to go into the framework of helping you to understand how your superpower was developed, right? Helping you to understand how your superpower was developed. And like I said, when we talk about these superpowers, first, when it's a superpower now, we're turning it into a superpower. But before, it was our survival method. It was what we had to use to survive. And now we're just, you know, reframing it and we're making it into a positive thing. Okay? So there are 3 P's, and I wish y'all could see the PowerPoint, but y'all cannot. But there are the firstborn power framework. So there's 3 P's in this framework. The first one is perception, which is the story, right? The second P is pressure, which is the weight. And the third P is permission, which is the choice, okay? Perception, pressure, and permission. And we're going to go through these 3 P's, and this is going to help you to understand how your power was developed, right? How your superpower was developed. So the first P is perception. And we talk about perception, we're talking about the story that you were given. So perception is all about how people saw you, and then how you learn to see yourself. So as a firstborn daughter, a lot of our story was written for us before we even knew what was happening. So as a child, you were already told that you was the strong one. As a child, you already was told that you had to do better. You had to know better. Like, you had to show up. You really had to show up as that second mom. And at first, those kind of sound like compliments, right? But over time, we don't just hear them. Now we wear them. Now we're wearing the role of being the strong one. Now we're wearing the role of being a better one, or the one that's supposed to know everything, the one that's supposed to wearing this role of being the second mom, right? And then we kind of, because that was the story that was placed on us, and now we got to interpret it into something else, and now we're wearing it on ourselves, and now it's like, oh, I'm valuable because I'm responsible. Oh, I'm loved because I fix things, right? I'm loved because, or I'm important because I know how to hold it all together. And at the end of the day, if you are fine with the perception that you have of yourself, then that's cool. But if you feel as though that the only value that you have is when you show up as the fixer, or you show up as the one who is responsible, or you show up as the one who always got to hold it together, then that's a problem. Right? Because at the end of the day, your worth is not based off of your usefulness. You should be able to thrive and survive in places where you're not always being the one that is the resource, where you're always being the one that has to, like, you got to do something, like you got to prove your worth to be there. You don't got to prove your worth to be in nobody's space or to be in nobody's face, right? So you are more than what you do for people. Okay, so that's the perception. So when you were younger, people perceived you as the one that had to always show up for everybody. And now that you are older, it's time for you to get a hold of your own perception, because can't nobody perceive you. You can perceive yourself. So you got to get clear on who you are and how you want to show up, right? And I always say, like, I don't mind being used, but you're not going to misuse me. Right? You're not going to misuse me. I don't mind being used. So the first P is perception, and that's all about the story that you was given and now how you wear that story. The second P is pressure, right? And when we talk about that pressure, we're talking about the pressure that the perception placed on you. And the pressure that the perception placed on you is the expectations of others, right? Because now, because people have placed these titles on you, now they expect you to show up as that. And when you don't show up as that, now they got a problem. And that's not okay. So the pressure it could become too much. It could become too much. So now you're the strong one, right? That's your story. People say now that you're the strong one. So the pressure becomes, because you're so strong, now you can't fall apart. Now you can't even fall apart because you're so strong. You know how this, like I said, like they say, check on your strong friend. People don't check on you because you're so strong, right? So that's the story. And that's the expectations from that story that's been placed on you. You didn't even place that on yourself. That was placed upon you. Now, say the story is like you are the responsible one. So the expectations that comes from you being the responsible is that now you're a perfectionist. Now you can't even make mistakes. That's not okay, right? That's not okay that now because somebody placed that placed that role on you that you are so responsible, now you can't even make a mistake. Now you're this perfectionist person. And I know for me, I am someone, especially because I was the firstborn, but I also was the only child, and my mom invested heavily in my education. Like, she didn't play about it. So I had to have the perfect handwriting. I had to get the perfect grades. I had to be perfect. That's how I felt, right? It was a lot of pressure being internet, like growing up in a sense, right? And now I have to really tell myself, like even when I'm doing a task, even with today, like it didn't start right. My energy was kind of messed up in the beginning. I'm getting better, but it didn't start right. But at the end of the day, the old internet, I probably would have shut it all down and said, you know what, I'll see y'all next week. But today, internet, I'm showing up in my imperfection, should I say. I'm showing up in my imperfection because at the end of the day, I'm not a perfect person. I'm human, you know? And even though I'm not showing up perfect, I should still be respected, and what I'm saying should still be valued because, you know, I'm not perfect. No one is perfect. So it's a lot of pressure that comes from the roles that is placed on us. And then when we growing up, we wearing those roles, and now we are like, we can't even show up as ourselves because of what somebody else placed on us, right? Say you grew up as being the second mom. That's your story. Oh, I'm the second mom. I took care of my brothers and sisters. They see you as the second mom. They see me as the second mom. Now the pressure becomes you take care of everyone, even when you're empty. Now you're starting to give from an empty cup. You don't have nothing else to give, but because everybody expects you to show up when you don't even have nothing to give, that's when it starts to become too much. So this is the reason why some firstborn daughters feel tired, but they still show up, right? This reminds me of a conversation that I had the other day where somebody said, well, you know what, internet, it's not enough for you just to show up, especially if you feel obligated. You're only showing up out of obligation. And I'm like, no, I'm not showing up out of obligation. I show up because that's what I want to do. Maybe that's your story. Maybe you show up out of obligation. That's something that you have to work on. That's something that you have to heal as being a firstborn daughter. You got to be able to create some boundaries. Don't just show up. If you're tired, take a rest. It's okay for you to take a rest as that firstborn, right? Right? Maybe as a firstborn daughter, you might feel needed, but not always nurtured, right? Where people always calling on you because they need you. But when do people ever pour into you? A lot of firstborn daughters feel like that. They feel like I'm always needed, but never nurtured, right? And you might feel like, or some firstborn daughters feel like they're respected, but not really seen. And sometimes I can feel like that as a firstborn daughter. Like, yeah, I'm respected. Y'all not going to play with me, but do y'all really see me? Do you really see me for who I really am? You know what I mean? I'm not just the big sister. I'm not just the second mom. I'm you know, I am a lot of things outside of the roles that was placed on me that I was born into. So that's something to really, really think about. So when you think about your life and you think about the pressure of life and the pressure and the expectations that the roles were placed upon you, what shows up the most right now? What shows up the most for you right now? And that's just a rhetorical question, but for me, I would definitely say I feel a lot of pressure. I did feel a lot of pressure, not too much, because I've done a lot of work on myself, so I don't feel too much pressure to do anything. I kind of do what I want to do for the most part. But I would say my perfectionism, that's still a thing for me. But as you can see, that's something that I'm working through, right? So we talked about the perception, the story that you was given. We talked about the expectations that come from the stories that was placed upon you. And then we're going to get into the P, which is the permission, right? And this is now giving you permission to use your strengths for you, because you have used your strengths for so many other people, right? So a lot of firstborn daughters, they never really got the permission to put themselves first, because you had to put everybody else first from birth, whether you were a firstborn daughter or an only child. Because if it wasn't your siblings that you had to put first, then maybe it was your parents, your family that you had to put first. But you always had to put somebody first before yourself, right? Now, within this framework, you are given the permission to use your own strength for your own dreams. So if you're the leader in your life, if you led everybody else in their lives, now you can use that strength for you. If you were reliable for everybody else in their life, now you can use that strength for you. Like, it's time for you to stop being there for everybody else and start using those strengths that you have been using for everybody else. Now it's time to make yourself a priority. It's now it's time for you to respect those boundaries like you did when you was younger, especially if you was the one that refused it or rejected the role, right? Because now you have permission to lead your own life. Now you have permission to solve your own problems. Now you have permission to let your strengths support you. You don't got to continue to focus on and be there for everybody else. You really, really don't, right? So those are the 3 P's: perception, pressure, and permission. And I hope that you allow yourself permission to get rid of other people's perception of who you are and redefine who you are and how you're going to show up for yourself, especially in this new year, right? And the only expectations that you should carry in this world is the expectations that you give yourself. Don't keep carrying the weight of the world of other people. Get clear on what it is that you want and just give yourself permission to have that, to be that, to live in that, because you are worthy. You are worthy of all of that, right? So we're going to move forward into the just a reflection opportunity. I know that y'all are typing. You might not want to type this, but if you want to speak on it, you can. But when we talk about that reflection, let's talk about the origin of my strength, right? So where did your strength come from, right? Where in your childhood? Because you, like we said, your strength was first your defense mechanism, what you used to survive back in the day. So what I would like you to do is just think back to a time where you realized, as the firstborn daughter, like, darn, I'm the one that they can count on, or I'm the one refusing this role in your life. When did you realize your strength as a firstborn daughter? Being, I'm the one that they can count on, or I'm the one refusing the role, right? So for me, when I think about this in my life, I was about in 9th or 10th grade. This is what really, this story really stands out to me. I was in 9th or 10th grade, and I remember that my little brother and my little sister probably was about 3 and 1, or about to turn 3 and about to turn 1, something like that. And I know that my mom, she had to go to work. It was a lot going on in the house. And mind you, if you're from Wilmington, we lived in Riverside Projects at that time, and they had a daycare over in the east side. So my mom had to go to work. She could not find their father at the time, and it was on me. She couldn't call out of work. I didn't want to call out of school. So my mom was in this panic mode, and I was like, Mom, it's okay. Mom, it's okay. I got it. I got us. I always got us. I got us, right? So I took my little siblings, and I was in a stroller, and I had to walk them all the way over East Side. And as I'm reflecting on the story, I'm like, where was the buses at? Because I did not catch no bus to East Side, but I did catch a bus to high school after that, because mind you, I was in 9th or 10th grade, and my mom didn't have nobody else. All my mom had was me. So what was the strength that showed up in me at that time? It was the fact that I'm dependable. You know, my mom can depend on me. My mom can always count on me. My mom will always be able to count on me. So that was the strength that showed up for me at that time. But a word or phrase, and okay, so the last question is, what is a word or phrase that describes the residue from that season? So although it was a strength for me at that time, the fact that I could always show up for my mom and my mom will always depend on me, one of the residues that stick with me from that time, and I didn't realize it until I got older, was the fact that at the time where I was supposed to be embracing my womanhood, coming into my own woman, I was automatically placed into a masculine role. That's what comes up for me, because my mom told me a couple years ago, she was like, yeah, Antoinette, you was like my baby dad. All I had was you. You was my baby dad. And when I think about that and I reflect on that, that's crazy. That I was her baby dad. And for me, that means that I was placed in a masculine role at the age of 13 when my sister was born. And when I wanted my siblings to be born, I did not know that that would place me in a masculine role. So at that time, yes, my strength showed up. Me being, me being strong, me being reliable, me being all that I can be for my mom. But yeah, and I embraced that, right? I take pride in my role as big sis. But also the residue is like, damn, I'm ready to live my soft girl era. I'm tired of being so strong. I'm tired of being the masculine one. I'm tired of being that's not the role I signed up for. That's just the role that I had to embody so that everybody else can survive. And I've done enough for everybody. And I feel like for you as the firstborn sister, I don't know what residue still lingers behind for you. Whether you took pride in the role or whether you resented the role, but we can change it. We can change our story, and we can turn our strengths or turn the things that we use as a survival method into our strengths, because even today, I am still reliable. I'm still someone you could depend on. I'm still that person, but I'm that for me now, not for everybody else. So that's my origin of strength story. So no, you don't have to share, but just think about how old was you when you realized that you was the one that they could count on, or when you realized like, hold on, I'm refusing this role. What was happening? What strength showed up for you back then? And what is a word or a phrase that describes the residue from that season? That's something to think about. All right, so we're wrapping it up. But before we leave, I would like for you to come up with one strength-led action that you will engage in this week that will support you in showing up for yourself, because you have spent so much time showing up for other people. So the sentence is this: because my strength is blank, this week I will use it for myself by blank. So for an example, maybe you being a firstborn daughter, you realize that you are real good at organizing. So because your strength is organization, this week you will use it for yourself by organizing your own space. Because you've done it so much for other people, now it's time to use the strength for you. Maybe you realize that as the firstborn sister, your strength is being the nurturer, right? Being there for everybody else, tending to everybody else's needs. Well, maybe this week you can find some time to nurture yourself, nurture your body, nurture your heart, right? Maybe your strength as a firstborn daughter was you being in survival mode, right? And you always surviving, right? Well, maybe this week you can choose one thing that makes you feel safe, right? That's not putting you in survival mode. What is one choice that you can make this week that's going to make you feel safe? Maybe your strength was discernment, right? Maybe your strength is discernment. So this week, what is one thing that you can say no to that doesn't feel right to you? You know what I mean? So how will you use your strength this week for yourself? Because we already used it so much for other people. So for me, my sentence is showing up. Because one of my strengths is showing up, this week I will use it for myself by showing up because I want to be there, not because I'm obligated, to be there. I'm showing up for me. It was something happened in the family a couple weeks ago. I ain't show up because I didn't want to be there. But this week, I'm showing up because I want to be there. And I'm doing it for myself because I love my family. I love being around my family. And they make me laugh when we have a good time. So I can't wait to show up and be around my family. So would anybody like to share a strength that they are going to use for themselves this week? And if you want, you can put it in the chat. A strength that you're going to use for yourself this week. You can put it in the chat if you want to. All right. So we are wrapping up, right? So today, y'all, we talked about strengths and we talked about remembering your power. That's what the strengths is about, remembering your power. Identifying that, yes, when we were younger, the strengths that we used back then, we used them to survive. But now we can take them same strengths and we can use them, or we can take them same survival methods and now we can use them to empower ourselves so that we can become the best version of ourselves for ourselves. You know what I mean? So next Wednesday, we'll be talking about the W in the SWOT analysis, which is talking about the wounds and the weak spots, where the residue lives the loudest. Oh, I just see my little cousin. Look at that, talking about family. So we'll talk about the W, where the wounds and where the weak spots, where the residue lives the loudest. I'm sorry. And I just want to close out by saying, I want you to remember that, you are not just the strong one. You are not just a responsible one. You are a benefactor of greatness, okay? You deserve the same benefits, the same outpouring of love and commitment and all of that you give to other people, the strength that you give to other people. You deserve that for yourself. And it's really time for you to start putting yourself first, right? Because your strengths are real, your residue is real, and your healing is real, right? And this is just the beginning, but you are a benefactor of greatness, okay? And our next masterclass is December 3rd, 2025 at 1 p.m. I plan on having all the technical difficulties that I had today. I'm going to have that handled because I don't know what's going on with that. But I thank you for tuning in today. Please, y'all, pre-register for the series, for the workshops, because you get access to the recordings, you get your workbook, and then you'll also get added to the Firstborn Daughter Energy Collective email list, where I'll just send out stuff periodically just as to encourage you to just show up and be the best version of yourself. And don't forget your strengths and don't forget your power as a firstborn daughter. And last but not least, if you do want to dive into a deeper story, I do have clarity calls open for firstborn daughters who want more direction, more peace, and more alignment. All right. And I appreciate y'all for tuning in today. Thank you so much. If you have any comments, now is the time.